government panel discussion. Each person is going to introduce themselves. We're going to have some lively dialogue. And then we're just going to kind of break all the rules because like it's crypto, so that's kind of what we do. And we're going to take some completely unplanned but super awesome panels input. They want to take some questions. So after they're talking for a bit, I'm going to come down here. Now, I would love to say that I'm going to mic run all over this place, but I'm not. So when I ask for questions, you'll just need to pop down here and I'll hand you the microphone. Okay, so we're going to start. Sergey.
Yeah, hello. My name is Sergey Dobrzewski. I'm from Belarus, and I'm represented Belarus and high tech park in Belarus here. So when we have some new laws that regulates ICO and cryptocurrencies, and it's quite a good opportunity for everyone. So I will be glad to tell you more about this.
Thanks. I'm Casper. I was speaking here before, managing director of EU residency. I encourage everyone to come down and ask questions because we don't have those Q&A sessions before, and we don't have actually questions on top of here also. So come down, ask questions from us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tim Bird. I'm a partner at the law firm in London called Field Fisher. I've been a corporate lawyer for 20 odd years and working mainly in the M&A and private equity and capital markets arena. And I've been invited along more as the acceptable face of regulation, I guess.
Jose Gomez from Venezuela. I was a former chief of staff of the president of Venezuela. I am involved in oil and gas business and try to raising the petrol, the oil project Bitcoin from Venezuela.
Hey everyone, my name is Prat Albanini. I'm a corporate and financial regulatory lawyer in Washington, D.C. in the United States of America. I formerly was a bank regulator at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, where I worked through the financial crisis and helped draft some of the financial regulatory laws, including Dodd-Frank, that has spread throughout the United States. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Ann Charlius of Shiro Rising. I'm the former director of Legal and Public Affairs for the Minority Chamber of Commerce in the United States. I'm currently the founder of Shiro Rising, where we look at emerging markets and industries and help to empower women, both through entrepreneurship and in fintech.
Hi everyone, I'm Tal Rivas. I also was on the stage before, but those of you who weren't there, I'm the former Prime Minister of a great country called Estonia. And after ending my task or ending my time as Prime Minister, I've been a member of Parliament and spending quite a bit of my time to help others to digitize. This others is mostly other countries that want to digitize but don't yet know how.
Oh, okay. I'm back. Okay, so everyone's from different areas, countries. I'm going to start with Casper. What's important? What's happening? What are people asking you the most about digital currency? And in addition to the talk they already gave about regulation, about governments, is there any way that governments can lasso this whole digital currency thing? Take it down?
Yes, so definitely with new technology emerges, then first it's used in some kind of niche sectors, and then after it becomes mainstream, then governments, as they are slower to adapt, they adapt one day. And now we can see the trend of governments actually going into that field. And actually, I truly believe it's a good thing, because regulations are good. Just regulations can be bad and good, but regulations in general are good. And once governments start to make good regulations out of that, then they can actually help people. They can help startups to raise funds, which are legally actually can be raised funds. They can help nations to raise funds. They can help cross-border transactions. And there's lots of good work for governments can do. Of course, I believe the decentralized world will stay there, but let's be honest that the world of centralized and decentralized worlds are coming and going through waves. Like some Estonians, if you remember Kazaa and Skype, kind of, before that it was all centralized, then they decentralized, and then there was hype of decentralization. after actually they realized that it's more efficient to do centralized world, and now Skype is not decentralized anymore, you know, now it's centralized again, and now it goes back to decentralized world, the blockchain, you know. So after some years we will see that actually blockchain is quite inefficient, like even to pay and the energy it needs, and then it goes back to centralized. So it's true waves, but from each wave we kind of see that technology gives us something new, and we can take something from that. And I think it's good time for currents to see what can we take from this wave of decentralized world.
Thank you. Now, before someone else jumps in, I just want to ask the audience, like, you just made a statement which is always controversial and interesting, that regulation is good. So I just want to ask a show of it, like, who thinks supports regulating blockchain and digital currency in the audience? Okay, we have a few. And who thinks it's coming anyway, or it's going to try to come anyway, whether we like it or not? Right, okay, so we've got some good experts here to talk about this from different countries. So I'm going to ask Pratt, you're from the US, and what are your thoughts on something related to government or regulation? What are your thoughts of what's happening in America? And, you know, America's kind of, I can say this because I'm American, you know, America's a big regulatory entity, and, you know, scratching my head myself, it's the first time I've seen the regulation in America not be able to kind of wrap their arms around it because it's global, digital currency and blockchain. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the history of financial regulation in the US is one of reaction to crisis. So if you look at the patchwork of the nature of regulation, it's one that's always reacted. There's always been a crisis, there's been a study, and there's been a promulgation of regulation. And so regulation has always been backward-looking and not forward-looking. And there's also an underlying premise in just American economic philosophy is unless there's a problem to fix, there's no need for regulation. So a lot of American regulation is geared at solving problems and not geared at proactively encouraging innovation necessarily. So, you know, when I look at the nature of regulation, it's really funny. Over the last maybe decade, when crypto was really booming and starting to boom in the United States, the community had that same type of reaction. They said, you know, we don't want regulation. Regulation will stymie and hinder our growth. But as the ecosystem in the United States began to evolve, as you began to see more mature sort of businesses arising, ecosystem players like exchanges and wallets and broker-dealers, and they began to enter and interact with the banking system and with the traditional security system, and they began to touch upon areas that are very highly regulated and very sensitive from a consumer protection perspective. The law that was backwards looking wasn't able to catch up with a lot of the new advancements, and so there was a lot of grayness. And in order to secure larger checks, better funding, and to interact with the banking system and larger institutional players, the grayness was actually a problem. And so now what I see with a lot of clients is they're asking for more regulation, but they're not asking just necessarily for more regulation, they're asking for better, clearer regulation catered toward the specifics of the technology. And so the very folks who were very anti-regulation are now lobbying Congress for better fintech-centric regulation. So that's what we're seeing right now, and there isn't yet a broad sweeping regulatory framework for fintech or blockchain very specifically, or crypto, but there is a real struggle to cater regulation to the nuances on a forward-looking basis rather than to react to another crisis in the US.
Well, what's interesting what you're saying is that now there's more entities coming and saying we support regulation in a positive way. And I just want to also say, definitely from the industry side, because it takes an ecosystem, right? We need wallets, we need exchanges for blockchain technology and fintech, we need software companies. So I have seen that same thing as well, of entities. Oh, you can't hear me? Can we get the microphones? Can we turn up the microphones? Okay, we're going to talk louder. Is that better? Okay, they're trying to get the microphones louder, so everybody's gonna on the panel is gonna have this stuff up. Okay, thank you for that. What I was just saying is that as industry wants regulation to be able to enable the things we need in the ecosystem, obviously I also wear a Bitcoin, digital currency hat, and one of the reasons I got into it, as many of you maybe did, is that we kind of didn't want all these regulations. So it's kind of a dichotomy. So I wanted to ask Dr. Gomez from Venezuela. You're a very unique country, Venezuela, and what are your thoughts about government, regulation, or anything related to that you'd like to share with us, being Venezuelan?
Well, Venezuela, such Latin American states, don't have a lot of experience in regulation. We are in the real copy, the model of Federal Reserve or the other regulators. But in the case of crypto or the other currencies, I guess have a revolution because everyone like to be protect. Some people, I will use a word maybe don't sound well, but some people in media use the word scam and some things, But it's important, regulate, but open doors to invest, to save opportunities. In some countries in Latin America, the investor come to mining, but the government run the machines. And the investor need regulation in some way for protection. In my point of the view, we don't need excess of law. We need a real law opens to market.
Thank you. And Tim, you're from the UK, and just again, another company perspective. So you're involved with regulation, and where do you see the UK going forward? Are they supporting? You've got the fintech, you've got kind of a combination platter, right? We've got fintech, we've got blockchain technology, we've got digital currency, Bitcoin trading. Over to you, Tim.
I think obviously the UK is in quite an interesting situation at the moment, whilst we're sort of furiously Brexiting ourselves to death. But I think one point I would pick up on is that perhaps Brexit can be seen from another perspective, which is people being fed up with over-regulation and over-bureaucracy. And this has led to a bit of a backlash at the moment. I think I'd pick up on what Pratt was saying, which is that all regulation is largely reactive. And you tend to have these things going in cycles where you have a catastrophe or a crisis blow up. We saw 2008 was the last major one in the financial world. And I think we're sort of seeing the current wave of crypto being a reaction and backlash to that. I think Brexit is a backlash to having had too much regulation for too long in some people's minds. But what I'd like to see is, people keep telling me that the crypto world is great because it's not regulated. As a lawyer, I completely disagree with that. We have a huge amount of regulations in place already. And what law enforcement agencies are trying to get to grips with now is an interpretation of those laws that were designed for an analog world and retrofit them to a digital one. So I think what we do need is we do need some good regulation, some soft regulation, which will incentivize entrepreneurial activity and creativity, but at the same time protect consumers as best as we can. Trying to find that balance is always very difficult. And I think one of the other interesting things is hearing from the gentleman here about Estonia. I think it's quite interesting if you see what's going on in the US and what's going on in the EU and the UK, where we're trying to get to grips with years and years of layers of regulation being put on top of layers of regulation. It's interesting, if you could start from scratch, you certainly wouldn't design the regulations the way we have them at the moment. And I think what's interesting is seeing what's going on in Estonia. It's like starting from scratch, but really interesting that you can create something that works for the digital age. And I think that we'll see a lot of governments following that model quite closely in due course.
Thank you, Tim. And Sergey, now I last night you stood up and talked a bit about Belarus, am I correct?
Yes,
From last night.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us is happening there, and is it a friendly country for this blockchain and emerging technologies of digital currency?
So Belarus really wants to be friendly. We're really friendly people. We're trying to make our country more friendly, but we have some ex-Soviet Union issues. That is, sometimes people think that Belarus is just like an ex-Soviet Union country, is not very friendly, but it's many years it's not true. So, and now this story with good regulation of ICO and blockchain companies and cryptocurrencies, I think that it's a signal that we really want to work with this technology. We really want to increase the entrepreneurship in our country, and we want to do this. And one of the innovation as well is in a high-tech park for companies who's working in high-tech parks. They can use English laws norms to create corporate agreements and to build this, to run a business in a very high standards. And these high-tech park companies, when they make contracts with foreigners or inside, they can use international arbitration system. So that is why it's a new step for us to protect investor rights and to say that, okay, we realize that all over the world these things working like this, and we also want to do it this way. But for regulation of this crypto and ICOs and mining, we say, okay, we provide all the important opportunities for everyone who wants to came to Belarus or who is already in Belarus, make some any mining. And one more thing we did, and I think it's actually a good news, it's tax vacations for 5 years for some issues, and even more, there is for high-tech park residents in Belarus, the tax vacations is till 2050, almost 2050. It is the government sees a great opportunity in this IT direction. That is why we are really interested in discussing and finding the new ideas, what should be done, because I think that we're regulating not something, we are not regulating IT, we're regulating our relationships between people inside the country, between people from other countries with each other. That is why we should really realize what is the issue of these relationships. So, and we will be really pleased for your feedback, and if you have any questions or any proposals, we just want to hear it, because it's very important to you what is international society think about the opportunities we need to develop together.
So hopefully here on the Blockchain Cruise,
Yeah,
you'll meet some people who want to speak to you about Belarus. Now I want to go to Anne. So Anne, now you spoke this morning and you mentioned that your family is from Haiti originally, is that right? Okay, so now this is interesting, right? So Haiti is not the wealthiest country, I would say, and definitely can use some more support from the world. So do you see digital currency or blockchain really help enabling people such as in Haiti getting out of poverty? Because I mean, I know when I first came into Bitcoin, it was bank the unbanked, and I'm like not 20 anymore, and I couldn't believe how naive I was that I actually, and I know a lot of other people have said, thought that was going to be faster and easier. It is easy in some countries, but what are your thoughts?
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful question. You know, I do think cryptocurrency will do a lot.
Talk about Bitcoin.
Okay, is that better? Can you guys hear me? Okay, so that's much better. So I do think cryptocurrency can do a lot for social change for countries like Haiti, like Venezuela, like so many countries in Africa and all over the world, and even in the United States. The reality is even in the United States, a country like the United States, we still have poor. We still have people that are struggling. And I think the culture of the community is going to go a long way in making that impact. One of our speakers shared about Food for the Poor and how his audience was able to raise $50,000 using cryptocurrency to raise those funds. So I think that we do live in a world where we can balance financial growth with social change. I think that's possible. To answer the question and the topic more closely that we're talking about, government intervention, regulations. I have a law background, I went to law school. Even though I'm not practicing as a lawyer, I do think government intervention and regulation is something that's going to happen, whether we like it or not. But I think it's so important that we do balance that and we don't allow, and regulators do not so infiltrate the systems that it becomes weights on the ankles of the industry where we're not able to grow and be flexible. Because when we look at the companies that have grown and have done well, who have then fallen, one of the reasons they have fallen is that they are not willing to grow and be flexible and change quickly. And oftentimes when we add regulations, we slow down the process, and we just live in a world where we can't be slowed down.
Thank you. Now, we're going to go to Tavi, but if anybody has any questions for the panel, and you just kind of want to pop down here, then after we have Tavi, I'm going to ask him a question. And then if anybody has any questions, let me know. Before we do that, I want to ask the panel, I'm going to take a little poll here. So, on the panel, who thinks that a country will develop its own digital currency like in the next 2 years? What do you think? What time frame? Or at all? Does anyone on the panel believe that that there will be a country with its own digital currency? Okay. What about the audience? Do you believe that a country will develop its own digital currency soon? Yeah. Pretty much. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, Tavi. So what are your thoughts on that as far as, some of the, I guess, I don't know, not your country's pretty progressive, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, first of all, I think 2 years is probably too fast, but I think eventually every one of us will understand that cash is not something that is the best way of exchanging value in the 21st century. I come from a country where we use euros. When I take the cash here, I need to change it and I need to pay huge fees for people who do that. Even if I use credit card, which is an invention, by the way, 60 years ago, even if I use credit card here, I pay 4% of the sum to some intermediaries. So that's the credit card, just like cash, is not the most secure way of doing things. So I'm quite positive that at some point we will start using something that is much faster, is cheaper, and is more effective, and hopefully something that is interchangeable much more easily, so that when an Estonian comes to Singapore, I don't need to worry too much about all the exchange rates and differences and so forth. Now, I think that not all regulation is bad, but bad regulation could be awful. Let me give you just a few examples what kind of regulation could be really, really good. In principle, regulating some basic things is absolutely necessary. I think we all agree that we should agree on which side of a road to ride or drive. Obviously, Estonians and Brits haven't agreed upon themselves, but it's okay that at least when I go to UK, I won't try to establish the Estonian rule there, because I would be hitting lots of Brits, because they drive on the wrong side, obviously. But it's good to agree these kind of basic things. And then, it's also good to agree on, for example, that we can have a system to roll when I come from one country to another. When I go to UK, by the way, ever since 2017, I pay 0 on my roaming. When I come here, I pay like €6 a minute when I call. This is something that is, again, from the previous century. I think the concept of paying so much for simple phone call is something that needs to be disrupted very, very soon. But we will have no time to talk about all those things that need to be disrupted. This will obviously be happening. So I think there are many, many, many levels between anarchy and nanny state. And I'm really understanding why most people, especially those people who are dealing with technology, are worried about regulation, because many governments are leaning towards being the nanny states. And this is the problem here, not the regulation as such. And the final point being, if there is a good regulation in place that is transparent, that is understandable, that will actually help the companies, because if there is no regulation in place, then you could be pretty sure that at some point some politician will come and say, oh, this is something we will regulate. And you might be very surprised how it ends up being regulated. So if there is a kind of transparent and understandable regulation in place, that could give you some certainty what the future will be like.
Thank you. Now I want to open it up. Is there any questions from the audience?
While
I'm not sure if you're stretching or raising your hand. Oh, you are? Okay. Okay, all right. You're going to make me work today.
Could you please come down if you have questions? Then it's easier to ask.
That's okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay.
Hello. I have a very short question for everyone. So my name is Alexander. I'm also from Belarus as Sergey. So what is my question? As he told, the Belarus actually is the first country in the world having regulated all the spheres based on blockchain. So actually all cryptocurrencies, mining, and ICOs are regulated in such a way that everyone can do it through the sandbox in Belarus and pay no taxes from this within the next 5 years. So my question is, you are sitting here and you are international lawyers and the representative of governments and so on. How do you see that a small country in the center of Europe can survive surrounding the countries which either do not regulate this, but allowing foreign citizens to exchange cryptocurrencies and to participate in ICOs in Belarus? So in Belarus it's okay, we accept everyone, but how foreign countries will accept this or not?
Thank you. If we want to have one or two of the panelists answer that question. Everybody get the question?
So the question was how foreign countries, like our countries, will accept your regulations?
Yeah, for example, so in Belarus now, any foreign citizen, for example, EU citizen or the US citizen, can either open bank accounts and exchange cryptocurrency through a sandbox in Belarus. So it's allowed. And how do you think your personal governments will allow it, control it, and secure it or not? So that is the question.
So, Prat, are you answering?
So yeah, I'll try to answer that. It's a tough question. It's a sort of international government reciprocity. So at least in the U.S. And I don't speak for the U.S., but just speak as an observer and former government official. There's great pride taken in American exceptionalism, and it's the exact opposite of that. It's doing things in a very American way in light of the unique historical, cultural, political, economic context, even if that may mean less international cooperation and less harmonization of the laws, and that's oftentimes viewed as a good thing. Now, when you're operating a global business that's borderless, as cryptocurrency tends to be, that obviously creates a real friction. So I don't know that there's a great answer, but I think the core to that answer, which is both supranational and intranational, is that if we're intimately concerned with the regulation that impacts our businesses, and we want good, transparent regulation, and we agree that some level of regulation is important, it's incumbent upon the community that is about to be regulated to take a very proactive role in trying its best to shape that regulation, because if regulation is going to be inevitable, and we know it's coming, then one of the best things to do is to be proactive. And so if you want better regulation,